Your Excellency, Neil Scantlebury, Roman Catholic Bishop of the Diocese of Barbados, distinguished members of the panel, members of the clergy, Mr. Trevor Thorpe, moderator, attendees in the church and online, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I am Denise Mongery Rogers, a member of the Diocesan Planning Committee for the Jubilee year, and I am most honored to welcome you to our panel discussion, Crime and Violence, Seeking Pathways to Restoration. This discussion being held in our historical and architecturally beautiful St. Patrick's Roman Catholic Cathedral, which is over 125 years old, comes at a critical time as our communities in Barbados and around the world grapple with the far-reaching and devastating effects of crime and violence. As we are all aware, crime and violence have the potential to disrupt the peace we enjoy in our beautiful island of Barbados. The social, economic, political, and cultural impact that can accrue can be overwhelming for a small economy like ours. While these challenges are significant, so too are the opportunities for change, healing, restorative justice, and hope. We are privileged to have an esteemed panel of experts, each bringing unique perspectives from law enforcement, policy advocacy, the community work, and together we will explore the root causes of crime and violence, examine their impact, and most importantly, strategies for holistic, meaningful restoration and resilience. This discussion is not just about identifying problems, but also forging solutions. We encourage each and every one of you to engage, ask questions, and reflect on ways we can collectively towards a safer, more embracing communities. We have to work hard to preserve our beautiful island. Thank you for being here. We will begin this important conversation by asking Bishop Neil for his blessing on the proceedings, and then I will introduce and turn over to our moderator, Mr. Trevor Thorpe.
Can we stand for a moment in prayer, please? In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, we ask you to pour forth your blessings upon our proceedings today. We pray, dear God, that your Spirit will move with power and might in each and every one of us, that you will give us listening ears and open hearts, so that your holy will be known, and that you will give us the courage to do your will. And so, Father in heaven, may the faith you have given us in your Son, Jesus Christ, our brother, and the flame of charity enkindle in our hearts by the Holy Spirit, reawaken in us the blessed hope for the coming of your kingdom. May your grace transform us into tireless cultivators of the seeds of the gospel. May those seeds transform from within both humanity and the whole cosmos in the sure expectation of a new heaven and a new earth, when with the power of evil vanquished, your glory will shine eternally. May the grace of the Jubilee reawaken in us pilgrims of hope, a yearning for the treasures of heaven. May that same grace spread the joy and peace of our Redeemer throughout the earth. To you, our God, eternally blessed, be glory and praise forever and ever. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Please be seated.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Trevor Thorpe, our esteemed moderator for this important panel discussion. Trevor is a renowned media practitioner in Barbados with a wealth of experience in broadcasting journalism, specifically business and sports reporting. He is the head of the business desk at the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation, CBC. He has many years of experience in this field since leaving school and has worked not only in Barbados, but also the Dutch Caribbean and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Trevor is also well known in motorsports racing in Barbados as a driver, sports reporter, and the editor of the Motoring News. His contribution has been recognized when in 2022 he received the Barbados Service Medal for his contribution as a media practitioner and his significant role in the development of motorsports in Barbados. He is also a Justice of the Peace. Please join me in recognizing our moderator, Mr. Trevor Thorpe. And now I turn over to you, Trevor. Thank you.
So Trevor asked if I can give an update about the status on Pope Francis. Pope Francis continues to improve. He's improving slowly, bit by bit, and we give God praise and thanks for that. And so he has respiration, physical physiotherapy in the morning and in the afternoon. And in the afternoons, he will also have he said he does his daily prayers, as well as he would do have mass or communion. Of course, not him doing everything. He'll probably be there in attendance, and he will receive Holy Communion. And also, he would do some work. Yes, he will do some work activities. So he is down, but he's not out. Let's put it that way. He is still trying to move things forward. Things are not standing still, and we are grateful. But he's not totally out of the woods. We need to continue to pray for him, that God continue to bless him and to heal him, and so that we can continue to celebrate with him this Jubilee year, because we are pilgrims of hope, and we do have that hope in us that he will get better by the grace of God and by the power of God.
we need to know these things. Because if we do not know these things, we cannot deal with the issues at hand. And that is where they say we need a candid discussion. It is not about blaming or naming. It is about let's find a solution where the solution is needed. Just going on a bit more. So with that being said, and this specifically may reference to suspensions and expulsions. Now there was a study done in 2017 on the prison population. And within that study, there were 438 inmates that participated. The findings indicate that 71% of prisoners lacked qualifications. 32% of that 71 dropped out of school, and 38% had been expelled. You want to know what we got with such prisoners? You want to know what we got problems? Let me deal with the children and get people to school. Between Monday last week and today, every day, parents have contacted me for 15-year-olds being expelled from school. Let me speak about there must be a school until 16. We have so many 15-year-olds being expelled. Again, I just front-loaded because I know that the panel may not get back to talk. So, I guess let me finish now. Okay. I'll just finish off. Sure. Yes, please. I assume I should be. So as I close, I really wanted to paint the picture to correlate between the suspensions from schools, the expulsions from schools, and what the prison population looks like and who are in prison. So as we start to expel our students, we suspend our students, we know where they are going before they get there. How are we going to be proactive in dealing with that? Finally, according to the Prison Service Annual Report, the 2015 report, it cost them, the annual cost to maintain an offender in custody was approximately $31,285.81. $, a year. And then there were some other statistics which, between arrest, prosecution, sentencing, there was an average of about $60,000 per person per year. I think we need to put some our money in prevention. I think we need to, instead of feeding the prisoners, locking them up, we need to get cracking within the communities and spend some of this money on the root and not the fruit. Thank you.
Thank you. John Beal.
Crime and violence is not my specialty, but I've observed a few things in different parts of the world too. What I can tell you is that if young kids do not have a future, and it really, in real estate, they say it's location, location, location. I think a lot of this has to do with education, education, and education. That's where it is. But if you get a student that doesn't have a future, he may not have a mother or a father, he didn't go to school, didn't do well, whatnot, what is his future? And when he doesn't have a future, he's open to be on the street, in the gangs. He then is an open target for people with drugs and whatnot. So he can become from an unknown person with no future, and in his mind, a gun, here's this, a gun makes him somebody. A gun can make him very, very powerful. So yesterday he was nothing. Today he's got a gun. And that's a serious, serious thing. So guns in this country, or any country really and truly, is a very serious matter, this thing. I can tell you that I once went to Colombia, and in a city called Medellin, it's Today it's about 3 million people. But that city was the most dangerous city in the entire world. They had 400 people killed in every 100,000. Today, it's down to about 7. There is a gentleman, he's a professor, a mathematician professor, and very casual-looking guy, because if he goes to the White House, I suppose he would wear jeans. He's one of those guys. He's from Medellin. His father was a very wealthy man, an architect. And this guy went to the best schools in the States and whatnot. But he figured that his dream for Medellin to change his society from the most violent in the world to something that is pretty accepted. They still have problems, but it is nothing like what it was. And he had a slogan, and his slogan was, Medellin, the most educated. He was able to take students, actually quite a few, about 4,000 he had working with the police, and they began to see that they had a little future. And with education, he got the youngsters to give up guns. They basically exchanged guns for education. And it is the most remarkable situation. In fact, I only met this guy for a day or two, with all ambassadors and whatnot from the world. But I was able to locate him, and he's a professor now in Mexico. And it took a while to get hold of him, but he said to me that he would come to Barbados. And I think that we can all hear people's ideas and whatnot, but for someone who went through what he did, I think that it would be worthwhile for him to sort of listen to our problems and for us to get some feedback from him about how he was able to convert the most dangerous city into something that's reasonable. In Brazil, if you want to watch a movie on something like this, in Portuguese it's Cidade de Deus, but in English it would be God's City, God's City. And you will see what violence is. It's called the City of God. So that, we can deal with all kind of things, and the other guys here and the lady, there are many different aspects of this, but certainly one major thing is that this has got to be a unified. This is not for the church alone or the police alone or whatnot. This is every single person got to come up to bat. And I mean whether you're a sportsman or whether you set it by example. So that's a little bit I thought I would just share with you from my little knowledge. Thank you.
Stetson, Bab? Just bear with us because of the technical issues and those online, but we've got 2 microphones that we'll be able to adjust from. If you don't want to move to the lectern, then this or another one we've got here to augment the night's proceedings. Go ahead, Stetson.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Well, I'd like to start at the start. The topic, the theme, deconstructing the problem of crime and violence, seeking pathways to restoration. Someone once taught me academically, you first define and understand the problem you're trying to solve or to address, because you could have a brilliant solution to the wrong problem. So what's the problem that we face? Do we have a problem? That's fairly obvious. In fact, there was a study on the economic cost and impact of crime across the Caribbean. It's a regional problem. And that posited that crime and violence indeed threatens the welfare of Caribbean societies. The key to solving the problem, therefore, requires an understanding of what are the underlying issues, the causal factors. What's the issue you're trying to solve? Now, with the murder rate in the Caribbean, the good superintendent may inform me more accurately on the actual rate per thousand in Barbados. I know across the Caribbean, It is one of the highest in the entire world. Are you aware of that? The murder rate in the Caribbean, if not the highest, certainly among the highest, and it may in fact be the highest. I think it's 30 per thousand in Trinidad and Tobago, 20 per thousand in St. Lucia, 50 per thousand in Jamaica. The levels high and increasing. Barbados went from, I think it was 21 murders in 2023 to 50 or so last year. I believe it was 43 in 2022. So there was a reduction and then a massive jump. The causes are multiple and complex, and therefore the solutions will have to be complex. As I said in my documentary, no easy short-term solutions. It has to be a long-term approach, a multifaceted approach. No quick fix. No. What are the considerations? What are the causes? They're multiple. And therefore, maybe we have to look at crime prevention, and that may be part of the issue that has triggered so much backlash to the efforts of quote-unquote crime prevention. Because all of the factors are so deep and underlying, and there are, so when you, and perhaps that's why the crime prevention is perhaps appropriately situated within the context of the social services ministry. Because when you tell people you are attacking crime prevention, and then there is a man shot dead the next night, then you are measured against that. Therefore, what is the success of your crime prevention? Therefore, a full understanding that the causes are so long-term and deep and complex. No one short-term intervention will fix this issue. Is there a clear understanding of that? And the way that crime prevention is presented and situated, does that give that clear perspective to the public? And therefore, are there unrealistic expectations, understanding the nature of the issue, and unrealistic expectations of the solution, and how they will be arrived at? No. I don't want to spend too much time in this initial discourse, because we have to others have to speak, and there's to look at all the other potential solutions. But what are some of the some of the causal underlying factors? The experts speak to the breakdown of traditional social controls. What are those? Such as the extended family, community ties, religious beliefs. Now, when we were growing up, I give an example. I came from Husbands Road, the Garden, St. James. It's really not the most humble, relatively humble circumstances. My teacher, high school teacher, saw me one day at the bus stop at Husbands Road, in fact, Mount Stanford's Husbands Road, the Garden, St. James, same area. Stopped with great surprise and asked, what are you doing here? He thought that I, based on my deportment and other factors, I wasn't from Husbands Road Garden, St. James, but I was from Husbands Gardens. The point I'm trying to make is that when we were growing up, there wasn't this natural nexus between poverty and the nihilistic dysfunctional behaviors we see demonstrated. We were poor, but we had values and we had self-esteem. That's where everybody is familiar with the Bajan term poor great. You know what it meant? You're poor, but you had some sense of self, some self of worth, some self of deportment. So where is that going in Barbadian society, where there seems to be this natural nexus between poverty, where you're physically, spatially located, and the behaviors you exhibit? But I want to get a bit more into that. I want to give other people the time to talk. And the Bible mentioned other things. You mentioned what I consider to be a crisis of culture and values. No, I'm not a churchy person. I grew up in the church. My grandmother clings in James Parks Church yard. I used to stand there and watch her thing. And I went to church in the morning, then Sunday school in the evening, then church after that, and then classes after that. And even though I am not a churchy person, and people are inclined nowadays to disregard and undervalue the worth of church and religion and the principles it taught us. Whether or not you are religious or not, a belief in something greater than you give you a sense of right and wrong, a sense of consequences greater than you. That if you do this, if you believe in nothing, you will do anything. And I'll stop here because there are so many other factors, poverty, whether the experts, some of them argue or rather contend whether really poverty is the cause of crime, whether this direct nexus. A lot of sociologists say yes, there's always a natural nexus between crime and poverty. Others say it's not necessarily so. It's more a sense of deprivation than actual poverty. If the poverty exists in Barbados, it's far different than the poverty that exists in the ghetto in Jamaica or ghetto in the United States. Many of us were born poor, but our circumstances are relatively comfortable compared to poor. So other things we need to get into. But the crisis of culture and values, the decline of family, the lack of belief and sense of right and wrong, and I certainly believe, and I won't want to let you too much, I just want to say this finally. I think as people lose a sense of the place of the church in society is diminished for a number of reasons, as society evolves. But the critical importance of the church, it gave us a sense of value, a signpost to live our life, a value system. And as that diminishes, we must find a way, whether it's a system of societal ethics, we must find a way to restore those teachings in society. Otherwise, we're in a lot of trouble. We'll get more than that.
Inspector?
My opening remarks are that crime was being committed. Crime and violence was an activity from time immemorial. We go back to Bible times and we see two brothers living in the earth, Cain and Abel. One was getting through better than the other, and he got jealous of him, enticed him out in the field and killed him. So I say this to say that we were dealing with crime and violence for thousands of years, and we haven't gotten the fix yet. And I believe it is greater than just the societal problems, environmental problems, and all the other economic problems we talk about. I think the greater bad is the sin nature in man. And so you find that even in raising our children, you don't have to teach a little child how to do bad. You have to teach them how to do good, which means they're always inclined to do bad, and you then have to try to correct that behavior. And so we, the Barbados Police Service, we're the primary law enforcement agency in the country. Our core responsibilities are the prevention, investigation, and detection of crime, maintaining the Queen's peace, etc. And we try to roll out our operational strategies as best as possible to prevent crime and also to suppress it. Now, the major concern is always major crime. And that's, although crime is crime, we try to focus on the major crime because that's what caused the public outcry, the alarm in the society, and that fear of crime. And so our focus really is on that. I think over the years we've been doing a reasonably good job. We recognize that the crime and violence really, if we had to put our finger on one of the main causes, would be we call it the introduction of drugs. I think that's what is fueling it. It is big money. Everybody can get quick money out of it. And then out of that flows the gun violence, because you have then to get the guns to protect your turf and to protect your investment. And so we have to look again at these root causes, and once we can do that, I think, again, as the other panelists said, it has to be an interagency approach. It's not just left alone to the police. We are the first cog in the wheel, because we go there, we investigate, we arrest, we charge, we send them through the court system and up to the prison. And so the church and all the other social agencies and other stakeholders must come together. There must be an interagency approach, I would say, to manage crime and to suppress it as much as possible, but I don't think we can obliterate it. Thanks.
Thank you, panel. But there is also, if I may add to you all that is said, that the problem has started from in the home. And we need to, how can we address it in all the hundreds and thousands of households that we have? Where do we begin? How do we get to them? How do we reach them? Anybody? Yeah. Use the microphone. You can sit. Oh, right, there's one. You can remain there with it. Yes, that one. Turn it on.
I think that's where we need to begin. Because when we, in our Caribbean reality, Edith Clark wrote her book in 1957, My Mother Who Fathered Me. And it was, if you do anthropology or sociology, that's the text that you followed as a student. But that's the reality of the Caribbean. The father was there, but his influence was not as impactful as the mother. And so when we move into the demographics change, we move into so-called nuclear families. And when you don't have that extended family, where would the mother get the information in terms of raising the young child? When she leaves QH, there's no manual that will tell her if she follows these rules. So you have to get it from people around you. And if they're not around you and you're struggling as a single parent to put food on the table, you can't provide all the other variables. So if the studies have helped us to recognize as the demographics change, gangs popped up. Because especially young men, they want to interact. And they want some person to listen to. They want to befriend. They want to be there. And so therefore, if there's no family, they found families in gangs. And they didn't set out to be bad boys, but they found family, somebody who interacted with them. Love. So the reality is that most of the schools that are from St. Kitts right around, if you ask the principals, the students, and I come back to what our brother was saying in terms of the expulsions. And the parents that you want to have at PTA meetings, you're not having them. There are several reasons for that. And because some of them are ashamed, and because their children are acting out, being suspended, and so on. I suggested to him not to name the school because nearly 16, 17 years ago, the Ministry of Education asked me to be in a school that became public in the newspaper. And it was labeled as the worst school in Barbados because some stuff happened. I spent about 6 weeks in there, and then I made some recommendations to the ministry, to the minister at the time. One, you have to have more than one guidance counselor. Two, you have to have a social worker, not only for that school, all the schools. Because if you were to go back to what a brother was talking about, the suspensions, they don't have any time to interact with students, so they suspend them. Listening to them, you don't have any time for that, so you send them home. And that goes right back. And the parent who is at home, who's struggling to put food on the table for the 14-year-old boy or the 13-year-old girl, they don't have that because many of them were not given that because the demographics change. There's no extended family. There's nobody to interact with. The church has retreated.
Rev, before you answer, just to interject a little bit, guidance counselors are a latter-day thing. Before we didn't have this problem before guidance. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm taking back my time from my introduction. We always say, oh, psychology, but psychological theories can help us in a way that we don't even know. They can examine how mental processes and emotions influence criminal behavior. These theories can help explain why some people commit crimes. And it can be used for criminal profiling and rehabilitation. While psychological theories can provide insights into criminal behavior, there is no one single explanation as to why someone commits a crime. But I say to you, the choice our young people have today is the family or the block. I'll give you some statistics about the block. This was a study done with the smaller islands and Barbados. And the 5 main things that came out of what happens on the block is the smoking of marijuana, the drinking of alcohol, playing games, dominoes, drafts, whatever you call it, cooking, yes, because they have to eat, and being engaged in arguments and fights. And they get to how they resolve things is violence. However, interestingly, 65% of the youths are of the opinion that the block serves a purpose. To them, when they are lost, when they are in either single parent, mother or father family, or godmother, or neighbor, or somebody they don't even know that the parents leave them at, or somebody who don't even know their name when the night comes, they wake up in the morning and nobody knows if they went to bed. So when they go to the block and the people in the block big them up, know them by name, give them a hug, they feel, right. Abraham Maslow said, we want to belong somewhere. And so they get to a way where they are belonging on the block. And when they are asked to perform duties, as you know they will be after they are primed, it's easy for them. Go and buy a gun, go and get a gun, go and shoot somebody, go and drop off drugs, because they are made to feel special, and they are not being made to feel special in their homes. You know, the question again about the block. If Barbados expects to see a decline in the crime rate, and if we expect to see our young men especially become self-sufficient and skilled individuals, we have to invest in their future. And I'm not saying that we are not doing it, you know. But some of the things we are doing is getting through, and some is not. Why it is? Something we are not doing right. So we have to get it right and move forward with these young people. Because whether we like it or not, the block is not going anywhere.
I just want to say something, you know, I'm listening so far. And I don't think that our parents are being held accountable. I listened to Fabian's address, and he mentioned the expulsions, all right? And he spoke about the fruit. So the fruit is going to end up at DOD's, and the parents are not being held accountable. I see parents come to DOD's to visit their children, right? They bring stuff for them, and the parents are not being held accountable. Parents, to my mind, are overindulgent when they have their young toddlers. They give them everything that their eyes desire, but they do not teach them how to work for what they want. Parents are not being held accountable.
Values.
And value system, correct, right? So let me give you guys an example. In 2002, I was at work. It was at Glendale then. And it was late in the evening, and the telephone rang. I answered. The guy on the other end of the line was a father. His question to me, and this was in 2002, we're in 2025 right now. His question to me, what can I do to have my 15-year-old son commit to prison for 7 days just so he can understand what life is all about? And I'm thinking, this is a man who has reached his limit in not knowing what to do to rear his 15-year-old son. Parents are not being held accountable. Because then those from 2002, They now become parents in 2025. What values are they going to pass on to the children now who are committing crime? Parents are not being held. I think we need to start there. Your question was in relation to families. We need to start teaching our parents how to train and rear children.
Use that microphone. Use that microphone.
If the parent just don't know how to, that's the last thing you said is what we have to come to. We, the church and the institutions, have to provide that teaching, because they are parents who are trying, but they just don't know how.
Through the moderator, I'd just like to ask lady and to just maybe expand on 2 points you made. How do you think and would want to see parents held accountable? And you mentioned investing in the youth. What do you mean by that, sir?
How parents should be held accountable. All right, you have children who will be drawn before the law courts, right? To my mind, look at the offense, look at what led up to the offense, and if you can recognize there and then that the parent was deficient, bring the parent up as well. Ask the parent questions. I mean, you can't charge the parent for what he or she did not do, but I'm saying there must be some mechanism in place for a parent to give an answer as to why their child or children went down a particular path. Now, granted, you cannot choose for any individual, but I'm saying if they did not have that foundation to make wise, informed choices, I'm thinking that you as a parent must be held or should be held accountable for that. Come on. You know, look, you have children in the home, and you place them in front of a television set. You give them a gadget. You have children who do not work and have the latest cell phones. How is that happening? So I'm saying that parents are finding different ways to, as it were, appease their children, rather, to my mind, than instilling within them values as to how to conduct themselves as they grow as adults.
Let's hear from our audience. Yeah. Okay.
Good evening. As you were talking about parents, one of the things that came to mind is the whole business of parents in terms of how they train their children, not only train, but in terms of how they operate together. Like sometimes you have parents who are on different levels. One parent says one thing, the other parent says something else. And you have a lot of confusion with the children. The children are confused. Right now, I have a situation, not my personal situation, but I am dealing with a situation whereby mother is saying one thing, the father is saying something else, and then you have the poor child in the middle, caught in the middle. The child doesn't know where to go, right or left. And one of the things I remember telling someone, two parents, you must try to see if you can, sing from the same page. Try to see how best you can give the best advice to your children instead of because most of the time, the children tend to want to go to the parent who gave them the leeway, even though it's not the right way. So one of the things I'm saying that we need as parents, it's important that we try to sing from the same page, we try to cooperate, and we try to see how best we can get the best for our children. If not, our children, they are going in shatters as we are seeing. So please, parents, try to see if you can work together and cooperate.
Good evening. Like Mr. Fabian, I've been around for a long time. Good evening. I'm Norma Springer, ordinary citizen. Like Mr. Fabian,
Put a little more power in the speech, please, so we can hear it.
I've been around for a long time. I remember the Richard Carter report on crime and violence in schools. I remember the Harold Hoyt Commission, and on we go. And yes, we are recycling and rehashing. We acknowledge the family, the home is dysfunctional. The solutions cannot begin there. Because the parents of today are the students of the same dysfunctional educational system of yesterday. State has to step up. We have to stop schooling our children. We have to start educating our children. We have to stop sending our children to school to focus on economics, training our children as units of labor, because every time there's any possible economic development in Barbados, all we hear about is how many jobs it will create for Bajans. All we are supposed to have are jobs. We are not to make wealth. We are not to create a new society. We are not to advance. We are only to settle for jobs. We need to start to educate for society. And if we educate for society, the economy will follow. Safety, crime, and violence will be minimized. We need to rethink, not the fiddling with the 11 plus that we're talking about now, because again, I've been around long enough to hear many fiddles about the 11 plus. In 2008, the Democratic Labour Party came into office and spoke about education reform. A fancy committee was set up, National Advisory Commission on Education Reform, if I remember correctly. Yet before the report could have been submitted, a whole heap of things were done, and when you examine what was done and what the report says, they were miles apart. We are not serious about education reform. We like to talk about it, we like to tinker left, we like to tinker right, but we are not addressing, we're not belling the cat. Because it requires a political will and administrative will that does not say, I'm looking for the next election. I'm not looking to win the next election. I am looking for a legacy of restructuring this country to return it to a place that we can be proud of. That's not happening anymore. But I will end here because I can prescribe a number of things, like all of us. And perhaps from here, this needs to be a society solution, a collective, not leave it to committees and the same civil servants and the same ministers saying the same thing over and over. But every society, every person who's affected by it has their solution. Let us all put it together on some giant global spreadsheet and then determine where we go, because it then becomes the people's solution for solving the problems of the society that we live in. We can no longer leave it to so-called experts. Thank you very much.
So before you said, where do we begin? Where do we begin?
We're beginning right here this evening. This is where we're beginning. Mr. Fabian says he don't want to leave here without a solution. We're beginning right here this evening. So after everyone has begun, or whoever is transcribing the discussion this evening, let's start to generate the spreadsheet. Let us start now. And we put it out there, and let us all put $5 to pay Mr. Zuckerberg and whoever else in the United States for a website, and let us start putting it out there. All of Barbados, all the diaspora, put in their 2 cents worth. What are the solutions? And then we, the people, break it down. It then becomes our solution, and we say, Minister, Government, XYZ, this is what we want. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, Fabian. Yeah, there or here? That microphone or the lectern? Yeah.
We cannot solve a problem with the same thinking that created it. And I think that is where we are. The ability to change the narrative, to think differently, to do things differently, is what is really, really plaguing us. Now, we operate in a total different generation years gone by to modern day. I mean, even the way children of today think, how they act, how they respond, so different. When it comes to parents and parenting, now I've worked with parents for a while. And yes, we have to get to parents before they are parents. The issues with that is that parents don't want their children taught about parenting until they become parents. Am I making sense? Because you cannot talk to a child, oh, he ain't ready for that yet. She ain't ready for that yet, because when you speak to them about it, there's this notion that you are encouraging this person's child to have sex and to have children, as opposed to giving them the information and they act based on that information rather than ignorance. Now, we have a set of professionals in here, and it's sure bet over a 20-year period, they would have had to go through some form of retraining or training or advanced learning in some form or fashion. We have people who are getting children, we all may be guilty, and want to parent the same way for 18 years and then expect life to be okay. You cannot parent a 2-year-old the way you parent a 5-year-old, the way you parent a 12-year-old, the way you parent an 18 and a 25-year-old. Parents believe that if you are telling them what to, giving them tools, you are telling them what to do as a parent. No. We have so much relationship issues, and that is what parenting is. Parenting is about developing a relationship with your child and allowing that relationship to grow, develop, and mature. Parents are stuck. So when that child becomes a teenager, going through that adolescent phase where they're developing a sense of self, understanding the world, they want to feel loved, connected, they want to make their own decisions, parents are saying no. And then there's tremendous conflict in the home. Me as my guys here can tell you, when sometimes 10, 11 o'clock, we go up to the house, says, boys want to lick down the mothers. Over what? Because he want a red shirt and she want a green one. The lady boy green shirt. He's 16. We ain't go down the road, this boy tell you look foolish for that. He business. I am serious. We find so much conflict in homes because of pants, a pair of shoes. So my thing is, when we really look at parenting, we got to really look at the whole, we talk about developmental stages of the child. We have to look at the developmental stages of the parent with those developmental stages of the child. I have so much to say, we can stop there.
But Fabian, don't sit. Let me ask, while we are at it, there's something, a national organization called Barbados.
Yes.
What is happening? Because if we're talking about parenting, we should also begin there as the external end to the family.
Barbados
a lot of money is put into Barbados annually.
Just wait. Barbados got about 150,000 parents. We want to kill Barbados? You really want to kill one organization? You understand? No one organization can make any dent or create any sort of change in this society. Barbados is inundated. I know that for a fact. And we need to get parents get into the conversation before they get issues. Parents just want to go to Barbados when they got problems. Why not go and develop your skill sets before the problems occur? Why not go to get the understanding of what behaviors do I expect of my child when he turns or she turns 12 years old? When puberty sets in. When the boy waking up in the morning with a hard on. When the girl started to feel as if she got attraction for somebody else. And you don't ridicule them and make them feel as if they are not human. We have parents who cannot even call the word sex. Listen, I am 41 years old, right? And I can't talk with this in front of my mother. That was not the culture. That was not the environment. So I'm saying, like even me, I admit that, played with it, but I tried to do it differently. So me and my children have conversations that I never had with my parents.
She need Barbados, you think?
Ever need Barbados?
If she needs Barbados.
Yeah, I think she need Barbados. Yeah, but Barbados, we need more organizations. I think government needs to engage civil society organizations a lot more. I must laud the National Peace Program. They just had a national program called Parent Wise, where there were 5 organizations as part of that. The Barbados Association of Professional Social Workers, CISL, which is Emotional Intelligence with Tony Orton. There was Men Empowerment Network Support, of which I'm a part of, Barbados, and one more other. There was 5 of us, 5 organizations. And from the reports, they did fantastic. From St. Lucie to St. Philip, there were parenting programs across Barbados, even on social media. I did a program called Men Let Me Reason, which was a 10-part series of podcasts for men, for fathers. It was 10 parts on fatherhood. You can go on any social media platform and check it. And there's tons of tips from fathers who would have walked the walk, men who are influential, and men who want to see fathers do well in this society. So these parenting programs, I would encourage anybody, parenting programs is not about telling you what to do with your child. I liken it to a carpenter. Carpenter will use chalk and line, but then he also got a laser. Depends on the work, he chooses the tool, right? So as a parent, you learn tools and skills to use, and you utilize those tools when the time is right and when the situation is right. Your decision.
Inspector, just crave your indulgence, because we have television coverage now, they may want to use the lectern so that the camera could be able to pick it up, so that we can get in the television news tomorrow night.
Yeah, I just wanna bring a law enforcement perspective to this whole thing about parenting and so on. We have about 280,000 persons in the population. Those involved in crime on average is about 3,000 every year. In statistics for reported crime for the last 5 years, the lowest was like 5,200, and the highest was 8,000. Out of that, the major crime accounted for about 3,000 crimes, major crimes. Now, when we talk to those involved in the murder and the gun violence and so on, we recognize that there is some sort of rebellion going on in the youngster's mind. So some parents are trying, then there are cases of poor parenting, and then some parents are helpless. Now, there's a greater force than just the parents or 2 parents trying to control a child or raise a child. Now, we find that the drug lords, they have a great influence on the young people. They have the bling, they have the money. What I try to do is because I spend the majority of my policing career in the criminal investigations division, I'm still there now. I would go and I would sit down and I would talk to these youngsters. And again, the age range for those committing those crimes, the majority is between 20 and 29. So we sit down with them and we talk, try to get in their head, try to get their thinking, understand their thinking. Again, they talk about poverty, they talk about lack of opportunity, they talk about the school system, they talk about all things. And they're saying that the only option they have is to get on the block and get involved in the drug culture. We have the dons, they're supporting whole families, paying the bills, buying groceries, giving the children whatever they want, trying to want to school because money is easy. So they're more inclined to listen to their fathers on the block or the leaders of the block rather than listen to their parents. So like somebody mentioned, they want to lick down the parents. We have a escalating situation now where children are beating the parents, beating the father, beating the mother, and because they don't want them going on the block. But when they go on the block, they get money to go to school, they go to gamble, they buy the fancy clothes, they can go to fexes, and that's the life they want, the fast life. So it's a real challenge, it's a greater force operating than just 2 people trying to parent a child. That's my observation. Well, as I said, the majority of violent crime is driven by drugs, and of course, it flows into guns because you have to protect them. So we have to try to stem the flow of drugs, which is not very easily. Because if we can take the sting out of crime, especially big crime, drug trafficking and gun trafficking, then, so that was we have the asset recovery, different laws the government is bringing to try to pull the assets from under those big drug lords and so on.
Firearms are a game changer. You and I, who have some historical knowledge of events decades ago, could argue that the bad Johns and bad men and criminals of the 60s, 70s, and maybe 80s, far worse than any of these young boys you have today. Buddy Bradford, he's Julian James, Dr. Rat, more recent vintage, Mark Young,
Alfred Harden.
And Alfred Harden, who was killed in St. Vincent, wasn't he? And even more recently, Woggy and Jack.
Right.
The difference is that every one of them didn't have a gun. I don't want to be careful what I say because we're being telecast. Barbados always had ignorant people. Oh, everyone has. So now many of them have a weapon. So how big, and speaking to that issue of how big a game changer is the easy availability of weapons, and how are you making progress in addressing that?
Well, again, it has to be intelligent-led policing, because even when you bring in people, you hold them with guns in their possessions, ammunition, they don't talk. They don't tell you where to get them from. So we have to continue to drive it by intelligent-led policing, and that's why we were making the inroads. For the last 10 years, when I look at the stats there, we've recovered 831 guns and over 12,000 rounds of ammunition. So we're getting the information, but it is not as we would like it to. But again, we have to, make sure that they increase security and scanning and thing at the ports of entry and so where we believe the guns are coming in.
Let's hear from the floor.
I have a... Oh, okay.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and thank you everyone for coming. Thank you everyone for coming and sharing with us your knowledge and what is going on. Just one observation, and it is this. Our society is made up of many women, and we only have one in the panel. And the men know that it is really the women who are carrying the society. So why didn't we not have some more women?
Anyway. My back broad. It's okay.
No. We don't want a one back. We want to hear the heads of others. So thank God we have a lot in the congregation. But I would like to say, first of all, you want solutions, so permit me to give you some of the solutions, which are not new, because panel discussion like this is not the first time we have in it. It is not the first time research has been done on the same crime and violence in Barbados, and we're hearing the same thing over and over. What I think is needed, first of all, is compulsory discipline. Compulsory discipline in persons having their children at a certain age, joining or forming organization like groups, like we have the Girl Guides and Brownies and so on, the Scout. You need to have compulsion. We need to have it also dealing with something for the police and also for the military. But that is not just that. We need to have a common ethics a common ethics in that our young people are confused, politicians confuse them, church leaders confuse them about what is right and wrong. We need to have a common ethics where children can think for themselves through a particular kind of understanding to help them to be to build a character. We don't have that. Everybody giving their own rule. The next thing I would like to say is that you are talking about education. Education is important, but education is catered for specific things. Somebody give an insight to that. It is catered to serve the status quo, to serve the society, to bring in more money. So we have those persons who fall out the edge of, from education and so on because they cannot cope and there is nothing to support them in that regard. The next thing I would like to say is our architecture. Our buildings are built like prisons. When you look, for instance, in the developing areas, developed areas that we call them, look at the housing. You cannot expect to put 8 people in a 2-room house, all right? Maybe just a mother alone and a set of children, and most of them are girls, and all kind of things happening there. And you expect to have a nice, obedient, non-violent society? You wouldn't have it. Of course not. The next thing is, you talk about education and scripture. Let me just say this. The ministers go there as a token. A minister should not be a token to schools in Barbados or any of the Caribbean islands. There should be, religious studies should be an integrated part of every learning institution in this country. You cannot throw out God and talking about violence. All right? So, the next thing I would like to say, if we want to deal with violence, like I think the police mentioned the fruit, and he speak about the root. So what is really the root? You all skip around the root of the problem. The root of the problem is sin. And I'm not speaking from a theological point of view, and don't feel upset about it. You may laugh about it. There is something wrong in the human that we need to correct. The Bible gave us a lot of ways in which that could be dealt with. Somebody mentioned about Cain and Abel from the beginning. But look at it, coming right down through the scripture. And what we have in our society and our church is that our unwillingness to expose violence. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to deal with it. The media choose and pick what to expose. All right, Mr. Moderator, just one more, just give me a little time there. All right, the media pick and choose, and therefore people do not really know what is happening. And our police friend mentioned it. She said we deal with great crime, but we have a lot of incest and a lot of sexual deviance taking place within families, and they don't talk about it. Even the church don't talk about it. Listen, we lose our mark, and we lose our mark because we follow a master who asks us to master our sins. And we have to look at him. What did Jesus say? Jesus took upon himself, the master of peace himself, took upon himself violence. Innocently take the violence upon himself and suffered so that we may understand what it is that is going on violently in the human. And there is a lot of things on that, a lot of things written on violence. You know, there is a theologian, a French theologian, Gerard, Lord, I forget his name now, but René Girard, and he wrote so much about violence that is happening in our world, not just in Barbados, and we are just scraping the matter. We need to change our architecture from those small rooms that we, and our schools, building like prisons, so they move from one prison of the home to prison of the school to prison to Glenderry. So it becomes an easy transaction. We have not learned how to create for ourselves the kind of architecture that will provide the space for human beings to exist in comfort and in a manner that is likened. So my conclusion is that, Mr. Moderator, we have to go back to the basis of religion. It has to be incorporated in all the things that we do. Children must be made to go to church, not parents telling them that they're tired from the weekend activity and therefore they must stay in the bed and sleep, or they're tired. So what do you expect? There must be a way to say, and the church would not enforce such thing. The church would say, oh, let the children come. Well, all right, they're going to come at a certain age and so on. Crap. You see, you making rules for a lot of things, but you're not making rules for these children. You're allowing children to do what they want. All right? And one more thing. Yes. Yeah, one more thing. I had something else in mind to say. But the police, I am at you, because I know you protect us. But you know, one of the things we have to deal with is the drugs that are coming in through the ports and port of entries in Barbados. We don't talk about that. How you could talk about the guns? Where the guns coming from? They don't make them in Barbados? Poor people can't bring them in. Who bring in the drugs? We have people, church people, Christians. All right, Christians. Some of them probably don't come to church. But these are the men and women who are drug lords. And they are the ones who are causing our children to be imprisoned. But we ain't dealing with that. We ain't dealing with them who come in the port. And I'm not saying that the people in the port ain't doing their work, you know. But how the hell is drug entering into Barbados? Maybe they're passing through, because they used to do that in Can 1. And the island I'm from, the planes used to pass and drop it down. And I'm sure the police know that. They will drop them either on the sea or on the land somewhere. But we have to learn to stop them, shoot them down. Send drones and bring them down. They're destroying society. Thank you.
So I just want to make 2 points. And one is on how the guns coming into Barbados. And the other one is on parenting. So I read a study, and my research background is what caused me to read all these studies. IADB study on some of the islands. I think it was a 2023, I'm not sure about the date. And they say here, and they are making a connection here between guns, drugs, and poor mental health and violence. Research shows that an increased risk of gun violence comes from a history of domestic violence, so the home, use of alcohol or illegal drugs, just being young and being male, and having a personal history of physical and sexual abuse or trauma. And a lot of our children go through that in the homes. And as I said, the homes are not identified as we knew them before. An important fact coming out of that study was that mental illness contributes only about 4% of all the violence globally. But as Tesson said, the media, the way they put it out, and something happened, somebody run amok, oh, well, we're going to have to check to see his mental health background. But people commit crime for many other reasons, other than being mentally ill. Gun trafficking is fueling increased violence and crime throughout the Caribbean. And according to U.S. and Caribbean officials, violent deaths in the Caribbean are nearly 3 times the global average. Countries like Jamaica, Haiti, and Trinidad and Tobago top the international list for nations with the highest murder rate. Guns again. But where are these guns coming from? Most of them, many of them, when they are found and traced from a murder especially, they are traced right back to the United States. So we could deport some of them guns now back there. Right? The whole thing with this organized crime that we are turning a blind eye. One of the prime ministers of the region said once at a lecture I was at, he said, if they will allow me to grow my marijuana, I could pay the debt of all the Caribbean countries. Some of you know who I'm talking about. But the point remains is we can't do that. We're not allowed to because it's illegal here still and all across the Caribbean, right? But yet we have all these guns coming in, and I just told you how. I mean, I know it's from where, but I don't know the how. And some people, father seem like he know where how. The inspector here, he laughing like he know how. But important to that gun violence is the growth of gangs, the growth of organized crime. Our young men and our young little marijuana selling drug lord, no big drug lord, but he get hooked up from Colombia through, you say Canoan, father, through where you said it, and so I saying it after you. Wherever they get hooked up through, right? And they become bigger drug lord. Not only moving simple marijuana, more stuff. You know, this whole question of easy acquisition of wealth. Doesn't matter where it come from. They don't have to drive a stroke. They have to run an errand and come back. You know, I just want to touch a little bit on the parenting because, you know, they're trying to hug the mic, but I am here to make sure that I have my say. Parenting, you know, it's not like it used to be, but we still can't give up on it, you know. Our babies are having babies, so it's not their fault. But you know how it becomes our fault? We are still taboo about our sexuality. We are afraid, as Fabian was saying. But you know what worries me? Is that young mothers still don't even know sometimes they have a oops pregnancy. They don't know how it happened. And that shouldn't be today. Catholic or otherwise, everybody should know how babies come. We have to stop with the birds and bees and be realistic. Because even today, the young mothers cannot bring up their children because they weren't prepared yet. 14, 15, 16 is not to have babies. Maybe if they're having sex, yes, but they shouldn't be having the babies. So we are failing them somewhere, the adults. And I consider myself one of the older ones. And we need to help them. That's only one aspect, how they get the baby. Then when they are in relationships, how they should behave. Some men still feel they should be controlling. But our girls are a little more sophisticated than that in terms of how they want to be. So we have to watch that. And then the baby comes, the baby crying in the night is trouble. More important than the mother is the grandmother. No longer exists. No 40-year-old grandmother want to stay home to mind no baby. And we don't blame them either. Because just as mothers are getting younger, grandmothers are getting younger. So we have to be careful. And I'm going to get into trouble for this, but I'll say it anyway. As a primary school teacher, I started as a primary school teacher. We put ourselves under economic pressure because we feel the government schools no good. They have no discipline. So we go in and pay school fees and send our children. And all that is good if you could afford it, but very often we can't afford it. And I ask you to ask yourself, are they getting there everything that you are paying for? I never sent my children to private school. I wanted my money for something else, to send them to university, because that's where I see it makes sense. But when you send your children to private school, and I apologize if anybody here owns a private school, make sure you're getting what you pay for. I was asked by my priest when I was sending my children to public school, how will they get their Catholic upbringing? I say, I will give it to them. And that's another thing that's missing. Somebody say parents don't go to church anymore. Maybe they don't. But they have to come back, as Father said, and bring church back into school. I'll stop there. I have a lot more to say, but I'm going to give the gentleman a chance.
Let's go back to the floor. Denise, and there was a lady behind you. She was also in the queue to speak. She'll come after you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Trevor. I want to put to the panel, particularly to the police, the prison officer, and the psychologists on the panel. I want to say categorically that we have a crisis in Barbados now. And when you walk around Barbados, every single place that you go, there are droves of young men smoking marijuana and smoking marijuana openly on the streets. And if I'm speaking under correction, but I know that there is a decriminalizing of a certain amount of marijuana. So our young people, if they have a small amount of marijuana, they won't be picked up because the prisons are full and you can't be throwing every young man or young lady who's smoking marijuana into prison. But it is a crisis because when I drive around in Barbados and when I walk around, on Sunday evenings, if you go on Brandon's Beach or any of the other beaches in Barbados, you will see a host of young men walking on the beach openly smoking marijuana. When you go down Broad Street, a few men standing openly smoking marijuana. When you pass outside buildings, they're smoking marijuana. Everybody is smoking marijuana. And as far as I know, marijuana is a mind-altering drug. It is seriously addictive. And when you smoke marijuana, then you have to graduate to harder drugs. And when you smoke marijuana, you have delusions of grandeur. You want to beat your parents. There's no control. And mostly, young men in our society are smoking marijuana. So what are we going to do? Who are the people of the future to lead this country? Who are the people of the future? What are we doing about it? We know all the problems that are associated with crime and violence. We've identified them here. How can we stop our young people from smoking marijuana, from beating their parents, from gambling, from being on the block? How can we do this? In my opinion, as we said, we need to have programs for parents to train parents how to be parents. Because parents aren't coming to PTA meetings anymore. They're challenging teachers in school, and teachers are afraid for their lives in some schools in Barbados. They do not want to intervene with children because they know the consequences of that. And so how are we going to stem these things? We have to have drastic programs. We have to insist that children must have some kind of disciplinary organization when they're in primary schools, like maybe the Defense Force coming in, and they must go through a program of, Defense Force training or police training or some kind of, training where they will learn values, where they will learn right from wrong, where they will learn crisis management, where they will learn anger management. These are the programs that we need in school early in the game, when these children are 4 and 5 years old. And we need also religion back in the schools and children having to come back to church, because where do you learn what is right from wrong? We cannot depend on parents now to teach their children, you must not kill, you must honor your neighbor's property, you must do all of these things. The 10 Commandments, we learned the 10 Commandments, but children nowadays, if you ask them what the 10 Commandments are, they have no clue. So then how do you expect these children to be respectful of teachers, to be respectful of parents, to be respectful of people in society? We as the society, we as people in society, we can't, go down the road and see children fighting and getting involved in cursing people and all this kind of thing, to tell them anything or to try to say, well, you're going down the wrong road, because they will curse us left, right, and center, and now they may be even pulling out a gun to shoot us. So we, government, civil society, all parents who are concerned about it, people in society, we have to come together to say that we want our governments to stop talking about education reform, and understand that all children in society cannot do maths, cannot do algebra, cannot do English and history and maths and all of these different things. They need technical training. They need skills to survive. We need to teach them how to do plumbing. We need to teach them how to do electrical work. We need to teach them skills that they can build things and make a living. Because when people don't have any money, when they're on the block, when they're smoking, when they don't have any caring parents to give them encouragement and tell them that they're going down the wrong road, and these are the steps that you must take to be able to, when you fall down, to get back up and continue, then, they're lost. So we need educational programs that are effective for children who cannot do the, subjects that will take you to university and all these kinds of things. We need to teach them technical training where they go to the vocational schools and so on. And we need to really stop all of this little buying of marijuana to alter their minds so that they don't know they cannot be, functional people in our society. Our society is in crisis, and we need to stop talking around the problems and start doing something to make a difference in our schools and in our churches and in our society today.
Reverend?
I think the very last point that you alluded to, I just wrote 3 articles for The Nation, and in one of them I made a point, and the class for St. Michael's students from around the Caribbean, this Catholic teacher, Roman Catholic teacher, she made a point. In my school in St. Anne's, the teachers recognize that we have a group of 7 boys who want to do something different. They want to be engaged. They want to use their hands. The teachers went to the principal and said to the principal exactly that. The principal wrote to the Ministry of Education, and the Ministry of Education says, no, you have to follow the syllabus, which contains all of those classical approaches in terms of the maths and the English and all of that. So you can help those boys. And she made a point, the teacher made a point, the boys dropped out of school, now they're in gangs now. When the teachers pass by them, it's sad. And that's one of the realities that we face, that we are catering for the academic only. We should cater for academics. Nothing is wrong with that. But we should not allow the others who are not academics to suffer. And that's what our brother was talking about in terms of those persons who are dropping out of school, those who are suspended because they have nothing to do. And so they get into trouble because the education system is not built to accommodate everybody. And that's the unfortunate thing, reality. And so but we hope that they will get there. We're talking about it a lot, but we are not moving towards it. And the other point with the marijuana, I'm not sure that we're going to, because we are decriminalizing across the Caribbean. And so they're not going to go back. And so we have to help our young people, because we have to ask the question, why are they smoking marijuana? And therefore, when I was an undergraduate student years ago, I'm playing football for Mona, and one of my colleagues, before we trained on a Saturday morning, he felt he had to smoke a spliff. Why? Because he felt it would make him feel better in terms of doing better. So you have to ask those questions, but you're not going to ask those questions and hear those responses unless there is social support for our young people. And the social support systems of the Police Boys Club, the pastors and community, the churches connecting with schools, those social support systems are not there. And so therefore, they're going to go back to the marijuana. until we put those in place and recognizing that we need, when we connect with schools and try to understand. And you know, I remember there's a school, I won't call the name of it, I remember, and this is going back, I'm old now, so I'm going back some years. And the principal asked me, come in, I have 3 boys who are fighting every morning. And they're only 10 years old. This is a primary school. And cut a long story, those boys, I took them to the library. They looked forward for me to come. And I said, I need to understand what's happening in the home. I went home, and the mother was very open. And she said, I'm a prostitute. His father is in prison. When I come home, he has 2 younger children. He have to prepare them for school. And by 10 o'clock in the morning, he's exhausted and he fights. If I did not do that investigation, most of the schools, the teachers don't have time for that. And so therefore understanding the issues that parents have to deal with in terms of their children, why they're acting out. And so it's not labeling them as bad, but trying to understand some of the challenges that they have to deal with. And we are not going to be able to do that unless we connect with them. And if we start retreating from them and trying to understand what the issues that they face.
You go back to the floor. Thank you, Reverend Faith. You can hold it in your hand.
Okay, good night. My name is Gabriella Rogers. I'm Denise's daughter. I'm 23 years old. I don't have any children, but I am surrounded by parents. I know people that are parents at 16. I know people that are parents at 32. I know people that are parents at 40 and 50. I was also raised for half of my life by a single mother, luckily in a pretty supportive family. I have 2 questions, but my first question relates specifically to parenting. We've talked a lot about educating parents. We've talked a lot about educating children. We've talked a lot about supporting children, but how are we supporting parents? What psychological initiatives are we putting in place to support parents that are burnt out, whose children are acting out and they don't know what to do? What initiatives are we putting in place for what are the police doing when their children, when parents have children that are attacking them? Are they just dragging the children away? Are they educating their parents or letting the parents know what to do next time? How are we supporting parents in a way that they can function in society? We've established that the church has taken a step back. We've established that, there isn't much of a village and the birth rate is declining. What are you doing to encourage me to have a child? How are you going to support me? That's my first question. Okay, the second question isn't directly related to parenting. My second question, the panel mentioned earlier in the discussion that fighting crime and violence must be a collaborative approach. I wanted to ask, what are some of the collaborative initiatives currently being taken to fight crime and violence in Barbados? How are the policemen, the guards at DoD, the psychologists, prominent members in society, how are we actively working together to fight crime and violence in Barbados? Thank you.
Yes, Fabian, you want to?
Okay, all right.
Fabian, before you begin, we're beginning to run thin on time. Anyone else we're going to take? You better let's take the question from the floor.
Sure.
And then Fabian.
Yeah.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I did take 2 notes from what was being said, and I think the first thing was education, education, education. So I think we can all agree that our education system needs revamping. We can see that if the students don't believe in themselves, somebody else on the block is going to tell them that they're fantastic if the school is not telling them that they're fantastic. So if you're not good at math, and I mean, I saw this in my family. You have a family member not good at the academics, and you find him then now running drugs. But I found out after he died that he was a good chef. Why didn't the school pick up that he was a good chef and let him do cooking in school so that he could then perhaps open a restaurant? If we're thinking about making money, why are we not taking all these creative industries and showing our students, why are we not doing mathematics for creatives instead of mathematics for academics, where they learn how to run their business? So things that are going to help them. Let them come out of school with just basic math that they can, they can, well, maybe not balance a checkbook, but they can reconcile their bank statement, that kind of thing, where they have fundamentals that are mathematics related. So that's one thing that we can look at when we're looking at education revamping. Something else that I wanted to speak about, which I'm having a senior moment right now, was education. And I think I'm forgetting I forget the second point that I really, really wanted to make. So I'll have to come back to it. All right, thank you. I'll come back.
And there was a lady, one more, yes?
Okay, good evening. I was thinking that cat luck isn't dog luck. And I haven't really, I heard it mentioned, alluded to by Denise, that the marijuana alters the brain of the young people and
Anyone.
But I really haven't heard it really emphasized that young people, I can't remember if it's 21 or 25, that when they use this marijuana, it shrinks their brains. It doesn't even only alter it, it shrinks it or retards it in a certain way. And I really haven't heard much about that. So I'm saying to myself, we want to decriminalize marijuana, but it can be very retarding for young people before a certain age. And I wanted to mention as well cell phones in schools. I know you can't, the horse is out of the barn already, you can't do anything about it, but I know how addictive cell phones are even with me. I love YouTube and Facebook and everything, but they can be very, very addictive, and I could imagine how it is for a child. They don't want to put it down, and then there are all the videos, people's singing all sorts of horrible things, and, so I'm saying that cell phones, the horse is out of the barn already, but they are very, very, very addictive for our young people and showing all sorts of things that we would prefer them not to be looking at. But we can't police them all the time because everybody has a cell phone, Everybody wants to give the child a cell phone and a face and to have a social media presence. So that's my contribution.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just make it quick because we are out of time.
Okay, so the one other question actually I had is if I listen right now, I want to go home and pull the sheets over my head because it feels overwhelming. Is there one thing that we as ordinary people, one thing that we can do within our lives that is going to make a difference? Because if we're waiting for government to do it, it's going to take a lot of time. If we're waiting for organizations to do it, it's going to take a lot of time. Is there something that we can do, or is there some national organization that we can set up where people like me would want to participate and say, what can I do that is going to help maybe a parent, or what can I do that's going to help a child? What can I do that's going to make some difference? Because some of them may be too far gone, but we still have many coming up, and how can we intervene at that point, whether it is that we, at a national level, support struggling families, there may be parents who have successfully raised children. What are things that you might suggest that we can do? And can we start thinking about something like that, where we put the onus on people who are here, who are interested in finding solutions to the problem.
And contributor, just be
Thank you for
tight,
indulging
concise.
me. Yes, and this is for you, the media. You asked, what is a solution? What can we do today? 90%, we're talking about parents. 90% of these parents are single females. Let us start a campaign to make sure that every child has a father named on its birth certificate. That is what we can begin to do today. No child today should have a birth certificate without a father's name on it. It's impossible. Let us start a campaign to make sure that every child has its father's name on the certificate. And we can discuss the regulations and all the nitty-gritties of making that happen. But let us start that happening today. Thank you.
Thank you, Cole. Thank you, subscribers. From the panel, we're going to wrap up. And just a minute at the end, we will allow Fabian to speak, and in that order.
Okay, no problem. So I can try to hit these things quick. The last point first, right? I fathered a child for 3 years, did a DNA test, and found out she wasn't mine. All right, that's another discussion that we men just face and the issues that we have to deal with as men when it comes to paternity. We ain't going to further. What can we do was a question, Justin, from the lady. What can you do is to identify what your issues are. We often look at everybody else and what everybody else is doing and what everybody else's problem is. Determine what's your issue and find your support. So before we start to go out and deal with everybody else, let me deal with self. It got to start there first and foremost. Next question, in terms of what we consider as collaborative approaches, yes, there are so many programs, projects that are done collaboratively across Barbados. So you always say that the government has some of the best projects across the Caribbean, sometimes if not across the world, but they are sometimes seen as the best kept secrets because people don't really know about them. But I'm telling you that the Barbados Police Service, the Ministry of Youth, the Ministry of People's Empowerment and Elder Affairs, the 1,000 Family Program, there you have things like the Drug Education Counseling, Men Empowerment Network Support, YMCA, BFA, and a lot of programs are not done in isolation. They're done in collaboration with personal development support. So there are a number of things out there, a number of approaches being taken to deal with the crime situation. I think I'll leave the rest for some other people to answer. So my final main point, right, is that, and I actually have it here. Well, Lord, wait, go on now. Give me a minute.
Just keep it tight, Fabian. We're out of time.
No problem. No, I got to really mention this. Back in, so quickly, in 2023, you know, we talked about the 23 murders that we had and so forth. But some statistics here, just quickly. Between the average age of the perpetrator, right? January to December 2023, the average age was 17 years old, accused person for murder. January to June 2023, the average age of the accused person for murder was 16 years old. January to June 2024, the average age of accused person for murder was 19 years old. And January 2023 to June 2024, the average age of accused person for murder was 19 years old. My final point is this. We all went through COVID, and it seems as if COVID has become this thing that we just forget about, okay? So many of these young people was affected by that COVID pandemic, and we ignore all of these things. Come back, if you have an issue with a 16-year-old now, come back where he was in 2021, probably setting common entrance, locked away in a house, dealing with the emotional abuse, the fact that he can't go outside and run about, the social look, so many issues young people face that we are seeing a lot of it manifested now, and we don't even understand it as a people. COVID is still impacting us as a people. We need to look at that as well. I'll end here.
Deanne?
All right, I'll just make 2 points and it might answer the question that was asked. I would say that we would have to, according to the IADB report that I read, we will need a public health approach. And I could talk on that for 20 minutes. we would need to reduce poverty. And we know how difficult that is. And we need to improve justice. I think for that, I'll just say there are things being done, appointing new judges and so on to get rid of the backlog and getting people called to court earlier and getting them out of the system. That report concluded by saying that there is no magic formula or no one single policy to fix the problem. A well-targeted combination of initiatives can play a significant role in preventing violent acts and criminal behavior. So we take that away, and I will leave with you something that you personally can do. If you see something, as we say, tell someone. If you are the victim or if you witness violence with somebody, say something. All violence and abuse must be taken seriously. Take a stand in your home and in your community. You'll be surprised how much violence takes place in homes. Because we still come up with the old mentality, my mother beat me and it didn't do me nothing. But the fact that you're beating your child, it do you something. Think about that. Be an individual. Don't wait for your neighbor or your friend. You do something about violence right in your little area, whether it's church, Sunday school, school if you're teaching, neighborhood or whatever. Take back the power from the criminals. Become a force. Violence is wrong 24/7. It ain't good in the morning, bad in the night and good in the morning. It ain't good because it suits you or because it's a means to your end. It's wrong, and that's it. Be a friend. You know, we are coming Americanized. Don't want to get involved. Bishop talks about it nearly at every Mass. Be your brother's keeper. Get back to that. Spread the word in the neighborhoods where you are having your, what they call them, watch, neighborhood watch, right? In all of it, stay cool. I want to leave a telephone number with you. There is a number from Ministry of Elder Affairs and People Empowerment, 536-4673 or 536-HOPE. And you must call that number. You will get any kind of counseling, whether you are the victim, whether you are the perpetrator, or whether you are the mother or father or family of somebody experiencing violence. Thank you.
Jeffrey? Keep it tight, Jeffrey. Keep it tight.
I must say I did enjoy, and I have enjoyed the evening. You know, I want to go to the question that was asked in terms of parenting, what you can do, and what we can do as individuals. I want to say all of us who are positive must model the behavior that we want to see displayed in negative individuals. So, instead of keeping into ourselves, being reclusive, right? Let us give back. You know, I think that is really important at this time. If we're going to talk about the collaborative effort when it comes to fighting crime, then all those who are of a positive mindset must be accessible to those who are in need. The other thing I want to say is that the church, I go to church. I want to say the church, to my mind, has lost its relevance. And why do I say that? All right? The church needs to be more visible in the community. So it has to get out there among the people. Because if the persons aren't coming through the front doors, it means that we have to go there and meet them. You know, I was driving through a community, it was a Sunday morning I was driving through, and I was with a guy, and I was asking him, tell me something. Have you recognized that there are not too many young people who are going to Sunday school anymore? And I bemoaned that. Why? Because growing up, that was the thing. You saw other persons either going to church on a Saturday morning or on Sunday mornings. That is no longer happening. Within the prison system, we will try our best
We have various rehabilitation programs that we place persons through when they come in, all right? But that is just a small drop in the ocean. What happens is that when they leave then, they must have some sort of structure on the outside. If not, they're going to return to the prison service. So I'm saying that the society must allow and help these persons to have access to programs on the outside as well. Because the family unit, as you recognize and bemoan this evening, it is not functioning. It's not really happening the way that we think it should be. All right? The last thing I want to say is this, or the second last thing, is that there's always a price to pay for progress. And as a nation, I think we in Barbados, we have progressed. We have become, quote unquote, fairly affluent. And in becoming affluent, there are certain values that we've allowed to slip by the wayside. I'm saying that we must ensure that there's a direct proportion to affluence and values. All right? The last thing I want to say is this one. I don't know if Superintendent White has the same problem, but at my workplace, we find it real difficult to recruit young men to the service. All right? Earlier I gave a statistic which says that out of 683 males in prison, 460 were under the age of 40, which is telling me that our young men are not interested in being positive. They're not interested in giving back. Why is that? I think I want to go back to my original point. We who are positive must model the behavior for them. I'm saying that is indicating to me that the funding might either be too small or too slow in coming. All right? But I'm saying, you know, the value then for that must be that anything that worth doing, then it's worth doing well. If you want to progress, then you go slowly. All right? Nothing good, or I should not, let me not say nothing, but all good things take time. Take time to grow and develop. For society, I think that we can come back. It will be difficult, but some hard decisions have got to be made. Hard decisions personally and from an agency perspective. If we are going to help our young people, if we are going to help our parents, if we're going to help our school system, some very hard decisions have got to be made. Thank you.
Ambassador John Beale.
When we say education, education is in a broad sense. It's not just what you learn in school. It's like how you speak to people. And there are many other ways for education. There was one gentleman here, incidentally, that talked about the buildings, architecture. There have been some studies that have shown that you just cannot change people's thinking just by the education itself, but in the buildings. One guy actually went ahead and said that he was able to get quite a bit of funds because he said that you cannot just take a person and teach him if the surroundings that he's in are really decrepit. And so he actually was able to do a lot in terms of improving the society. But the final analysis, we're just talking here tonight because there's so many different aspects of this thing. But the key thing, what you can do on an individual basis is really and truly, when you see something, as someone said, if it's wrong, you know, you try to do something about it. And if you can do your little part and set examples, because everybody looks to someone's example. I know that when you're in school, you looked at certain teachers or whatever, and in life, you need to have examples. And so if we could all set some examples, you know, individually, it won't make any difference, but just every single one started doing it, it would be like a wave moving forward. Thank you.
Sesambab.
First of all, I want to say I totally agree with Assistant Chief Officer Hoyt about some tough decisions have to be made. I was born in 1960. I don't know if anybody noticed, but 1960 gone and ain't coming back. So we have a society that's changed fundamentally. Our value system has evolved and not for the better. Our parents, our families, all the units and structures of society have changed. Our families have changed. Our communities have changed. And there have to be interventions and approaches and responses that reflect that change and seek to address it. There were some really good ideas that came from members of the audience. Something radical. For instance, I really think there has to be mandatory interventions for problem families and especially problem children and young men. Let's face it, you're talking to the young lady there. There was, no, I don't want to identify anybody.
Keep it tight.
Yeah, let me keep it, I don't want to get too philosophical. But families are failing this country, and it maybe not for their fault, for their own circumstances, and therefore we have to intervene to rescue those families, rescue those children, and rescue Barbados, and it requires some harsh interventions and some mandatory programs. So let me look, I try to draw on, there's a whole body of research that's being done, not just in Barbados, but across the Caribbean, in terms of the causal factors and the possible solutions. Some of them, first of all, let's stop first-time offenders and potential offenders from becoming criminals. And there's a whole bunch of interventions and social and other community interventions that will be required. I suppose some of these social city peace program stuff and some of the other programs are aimed at that. But how do we stop first-time offenders and the potential offenders from becoming criminals? How do we, Assistant Chief Officer, how do we reduce recidivism? I know you said that your percentage is like 21% because you measure it by the people who actually commit crimes and then come back into the prison. For the police and others, they measure it in terms of the people who re-offend and may be charged or come back to the court system, and that's much higher, maybe what, 60%, Superintendent? Right, but how do we stop this recycling, the revolving door of all these young men ending back up in prison? There's a young man in my own documentary who went to jail because his mother died when he was very young and he was raised by the streets. And he was appealing quite admirably to the other young men to avoid a life of crime and not to go to jail. So recently I called and asked for him to discover he's back in jail, because that's all he knows. So how do we stop that cycle? Addressing family and community dysfunction and the block culture. How do we address the crisis of culture and values? How do we replace the lack of principles and the teachings of the church, as the church position it doesn't carry the weight it used to carry? How do we replace that with a system of societal ethics? How do we teach right and wrong? And I think that's fundamental, addressing the crisis of culture and values in this country. Addressing the economic and social issues, the sense of social exclusion and economic deprivation. The lady talked earlier about, everything is aimed towards the economy. I got to tell you, that's the basis of everything. That's universal across the world. Prosperous, wealthy societies, there's universally a low rate of crime. Unemployment is a result of poverty, and that drives crime. So it's critical that we have a strong economy in order to address these issues. And then the suppression side, the police side, as a technical term, in terms of our interventions to deal with crime and criminality, or to stop the guns coming into the country and to get the guns off the street, and to put the criminals off the streets. And then there's another aspect of that, the community policing, which is essential to foster better relations between the police and the communities they serve. And finally, I think everyone struck that theme, working together as a society. Understand this problem is our problem. Together we have to find a solution and to work towards a solution. Thank you.
Superintendent White. You next. You're last.
Well, as I said, from our perspective, the number one driver of crime is drugs. And there's a growing demand for drugs. Everybody is smoking drugs. Not only people on the block, People are smoking in their homes, primary school, secondary school, tertiary education. There's this growing demand for drugs because it makes you feel high, it settles your head, it gives you the energy you want, and so on. And if we're going to attack the root cause of crime, we have to start to stem the flow of drugs. Now, as the lady said that, she passed and she see people smoking everywhere. But nobody is saying anything, nobody is reporting it, because everybody is afraid that if they inform the police, they're informers, that they're going to be some reprisal or so on. So when we keep saying, if you see something, say something, that doesn't happen. That's why people continue to smoke marijuana all over the place. It's not so much decriminalized. What happens is, if you are caught with under 15 grams, you are taken to the police station, the investigation process, you go through the investigation process, but then you're given a ticket. And you go to court and pay the $250, or then you go through the normal criminal proceedings. So it's not so much decriminalized, it's just that they don't charge you and put you before the court. You go pay what they call a ticketing offense. You pay the $250 if you have it. So a split that costs $5 will cost you $250 if you're caught with it. But the problem is, again, that people that live in communities, the drug lords operating within communities, people know where the drugs are, and they're not saying anything. That's our problem, because they're afraid that if they say anything, that the criminals are coming for them. So it's a big problem. We got to, again, work together to address these problems, and it's going to take time, but if we're committed to do it, I believe we can get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Reverend Faith, for your wrap-up.
Having lived in Jamaica for the last 12 years, the issue of marijuana is not a big thing because everybody's entitled to 3. So if you don't want yours, you give it to somebody else. But that's I know in Barbados it is a big thing. It is, and it affects people differently. And so recognizing that, and you still have to come back to the reasons as the superintendent is making the point that people use it for different and varying reasons, and therefore we're not a very loving society as we once were. We are not connecting with each other. We just launched a program in Trinidad called Project Irene last June, and what we are trying to do is to get persons in churches to be mentors. Go into schools, ask principals and guidance counselors, tell them you're willing to volunteer 3 hours a week to connect with a child. You can ask, and we are trying to get the business owners. In Antigua, I was in Antigua a few weeks ago, and the Ministry of Education says we want to have that program going. And I have a bank, and the CEO of the bank says, I want my staff to be part of the program. And I think this is the only way that we are going to see any difference, when we make a commitment ourselves to our children and young people. Not blaming and labeling them, but being out there connecting with them. And then I think, and there are a lot of children and young people who take drugs, who get into violence, because they feel that nobody loves them. Nobody really cares about them. And I think that's the only way I see it. And so therefore, I nearly killed myself in St. Kitts and Grenada, going through all the schools and working with the teachers and then doing parent-teacher sessions. The model was not working. My model, trying to do it on my own. But now I think a model where we get more people involved, members in the pews who are saying, if I'm retired or not retired, I can commit 3 hours a week to touch a life of a child, a young person. Once you're trained to do that, and that's what we're doing now, we're training people. We're making sure we have the right persons. We don't want to expose the children to any and everybody, but we're training them, and we're saying, make that commitment of 3 hours a week to connect with a young person. And you will, and I can guarantee you, because I've seen it, the marijuana would not be as important to them. And the violence will not be as important to them because somebody shows that they care about them. Thank you.
Thank you, panel. Before we wrap up, I would say, Reverend Neil and your team, the thinking behind today's exercise was good, but the work has just started, because I believe that when we are all done here, it's not done. You need maybe to set up a task force to come up with thinkings and topics from tonight's event that we can work on and pass it on to higher authorities. And perhaps you lead by example, that the church should be part of it, that you can probably, the Roman Catholic Church could lead the others, because that was the first church. Should lead the others and get them on the same page. But that is for you and Fran and Denise. But I think the night's session was well spent, and I'm now going to call on Father Charles Dominic to move a vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Trevor, for that introduction. Before I pass the vote of thanks, I was listening to all the conversation from the panelists and from you in the audience, and I was thinking back to my own family life and my parents. There were 6 of us children. All of us are over the age of 50 now. And, my mother, she comes to this church. My mom still looks after me, and I'm 61. She still feeds me on a Sunday. But the thing is that I have to really thank her for who I am, because she sent us to church. My father was never really a church person, but my mother made sure we came to church. We went to church every Sunday, and all of us. And there are 5 of us. Everyone else has children. I have a congregation. That's a little different. But none of us have ever been arrested. We've never been charged with anything. We've never gotten in any trouble. And all my siblings who have children have taught them what they learned from my parents. So, and so even as we didn't have what people will say you need to have as a family, that here we are still, and we can show that what we learned growing up is what we've continued into the future. I do have one thing that I want to, maybe this is for the police inspector, the minibus man. That's one of my pet peeves. I'm always been tempted to go in my gown, and when they stop on the road and talk to each other, to get out of my car and stand in front of their vehicles so that they can't move. Well, that's maybe a bit drastic, but you see, right here, they fly through here all the time. And one of the things that was said earlier about making the parents responsible, you see, the minibuses are going to stop wherever they want to stop, whenever they want to stop. So maybe perhaps one of the things that we need to do is to make the passenger responsible. The passenger as well? Okay, well, there you go. I'll move on then. I never knew that. Okay, so anyway, I think we had a really good evening. Robust thanks. Robust, frank, enlightening, and engaging discussion on crime and violence, seeking pathways to restoration. And as Mr. Thorpe says, the conversation has begun, and we need to continue the conversation as a church, Catholic churches, all the churches together working to find some resolutions. I'm sure we have a better understanding of the variables that we're dealing with and how we can play our part in stemming crime and violence in our communities. So first I'd like to thank Mrs. Denise Mongery-Rogers for opening the evening with robust welcome and introducing our monitor, Mr. Trevor Thorpe. Thank you, Bishop, also for allowing us the use of the cathedral and for your opening prayer. To our moderator, Mr. Trevor Thorpe, your name is, been around a long time. I think I know your name from the time I was growing up as a boy. but you may differ because you may say we're not that much older, but I used to hear your name all the time on the radio. So thank you. We thank you for accepting our invitation to moderate this event and so ably managing the discussion this evening. And I think we'd all agree that the panelists did an excellent job in providing critical information and sharing their professional expertise with us. And this will aid us in better understanding our current situation, finding solutions, and being change agents on the path of restorative justice for all. And so we thank you for that, for accepting our invitation. We also want to thank our friends from the media for the coverage that we've had this evening and will continue to receive from this important public service event. So we appreciate your kind facilitation. We also want to thank our technical team, and we do apologize for the hitch we had with the sound in the church, but no sound was going on YouTube, and we're sorry about that, but we kind of got that fixed. So Dean Ferguson, who would have set up the mics and so on, and then Andrew Gaskin from Living Water, who's up in the control booth in the other building, and for the live stream that enabled those online to journey with us. I think we had at some point close to 40 people, 44 people online. So to the Diocesan Jubilee Planning Committee, maybe you can stand where you are so we can all see who you are. Everybody's not here. Everybody's not here, but the one person that we also really want to thank is Fran Graves, sorry. She's actually aware of the president, but she was a real sort of pusher and instigator and everything. But, you know, we have this theme, we've been working since December, and I've never been in any group that meets pretty much almost every Monday evening. And we're taking a break for 2 weeks from this, for the next event. But we have been meeting, and we've been sending WhatsApp messages, and believe me, WhatsApp messages start early in the morning and go into the evening. Sometimes you gotta just not bother to answer. But thank you. For your excellent work and helping to plan this event. Also the Bishop's Office staff, the volunteers who've been working assiduously to ensure the success of not just last month's event, this month's event, and the next month's event, which will be on volunteerism. So hopefully, we'll tell you about that in subsequent announcements. I think from this weekend in the parish bulletins, you should see something on that. And the work continues into the year as we plan other events for the Jubilee year. And we want to thank you, the audience. Some have gone, but for all of you who've come, without whom this evening would not have been interactive and a meaningful exercise that it has been. And so we appreciate your taking time to be with us, and we look forward to your continued interest and involvement in all the other upcoming programs. And also thanks to our online audience, whose presence we were happy to have also. And this is for the police service. And Inspector, we want to extend our deepest condolences to the police service for the loss of Inspector Rodney Innes, who served with distinction and was indeed a beacon of hope as he journeyed in the field of law enforcement. Yeah. So I wish everyone a safe journey home, but before we do so, we need to get final blessing, and the best person for that is our bishop. And may some of the initiatives that we have discussed this evening bear fruit as we work to implement the change that we are all seeking in our nation. So let us stand for the blessing.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, as we go our separate ways, we ask that you be with us, protect us, lead us, guide us, that we will reach home safely. And we pray to God that we will continue to mull over all that has been said tonight, and indeed allow your Spirit to lead and guide us to help make our beautiful island, Barbados, more beautiful with a lack of crime and violence. And so, Lord, bless us as we go. The Lord be with you. May the blessing of Almighty God, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit come down on you and remain with you forever. Amen. Go in the peace of Christ. Thank you all very much.